Well, looks like I'm live here. Um, Silly as it sounds, I had to really set this up. I don't have uh, the lighting really sucks in this house, so there's not really a spot to put you guys if I was to stream anything. And yeah, so I had to set up like a table and chairs because most rooms are dark. So I thought I'd kind of take this time if anybody is around for answering questions. I might set this up for next Friday too, just so that yeah, something to do on a Friday night or Saturday night. Um, I find sometimes with videos you don't get a chance to really answer questions or have a meetup or really talk to anybody. So you kind of have to guess on what people want to see or what they want to view. And I know my place has changed or my situation has changed a heck of a lot, um, especially during the last year or so. And then with the whole stuff going on in the world, it's made it even more interesting to say the least. So, yeah, I don't know if anybody's here. Says there's two people here. I don't know who that. Oh, one. So that's me. So if anybody sees this or is around, I'm just with a dog and basically around answering questions if anyone's here. Give me one sec. Oh man. So yeah, I've kind of I've changed locations from the other place, and I have been working on a couple videos, but it's just been dreadful, awful cold around here. So I don't know if I showed you guys. I got an outdoor furnace this year, and yeah, I have an old house here, and let me tell you, it's not well insulated, and that outdoor furnace saved my butt big time because the old house here had oil in it, and if you had to use oil this year at a buck 50, the dyed diesel is a buck 50, and if you had to use oil, you'd go for broke because it's just been so crazy. Um, Even with me, where I am, you have the ability to get fuel on reserve, not that far, so it's at least doable that way. But yeah, it's been absolutely nuts in Eastern Ontario, and just trying to see the price changes, and yeah, especially on diesel and oil and fuel, and now coming into it right now. I don't know if you guys have seen fertilizer prices are going through the roof with the current Russia situation. So potash as well as urea seems to be going up. So it's going to be an interesting crop year, um, to say the least. I am currently looking at switching to diversify it a little bit and try and get into corn and beans a little bit. Um, I'm looking, kind of pondering into that idea. I would love if anybody could reach out at ideas for older combines because I'm kind of pondering that, and I don't know a whole lot of difference between the brands. We never did a lot of cash crops, so I'm looking more or less to see what options are out there and what I can do because there I just don't know the differences. I basically price stuff out, but what the difference is between the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s, and gosh forbid if I'm really broke, the 70s, and what I should be looking for. I'd love some information on that if anybody has it or has has any experience in that. I am kind of doing it on the smaller scale, so I'm just pondering what my options are on the smaller scale. So I'm trying my best, and I've always tried to stay close to, if I can, on a low debt scale because I don't want to large scale it. If I large scale, I don't have the land and the size and the ability to get access to labor to make it viable. Um, you guys here have been kind of watching me for the last, well, I've kind of been here a couple years now, but it's basically been the gist of it of a couple years of me trying to grow and expand. and I'm doing it slower because I don't like debt if I can avoid it, but I might have to kind of take it on just to get to a size that makes it doable. But it's just the farming. I find the farming climate and profitability switches so fast that it just makes it extremely difficult to invest hard into something because it just transitions. It'll change on the stroke of a pen, as they say, and you can be out because if you make it too designed for one avenue or one situation or one type of crop or animal, it can change. And I've been kind of looking at different options for diversification. So um, for me, I've looked at a couple things. I've kind of looked into the sheep a little bit. I've been looking into cash cropping a little bit, and that's kind of been the realm of where I've been looking. Um, whether what style of sheep or what type of cash crop is really varying based on my area and heat units and all that type of stuff. I Yeah, so that's kind of where I've been at. This winter's been relatively slow, just because of the way it was. I was really trying to set up fence all last year through the hot season, and hay did all right. And yeah, so I've kind of got. I probably will end up having to buy, but anybody that's out west, we're better on hay here than out there, but I find actually the shortage of straw this year, for anybody looking ahead. There's a lot of people who didn't plant straw or didn't get wheat in, so it might be thinner next year for straw if you are looking for that. Because I just been kind of feeling it around. I've given you guys a light tour kind of where I am, and yeah, so I don't bed cattle a lot, so I kind of bed them when it's really wet, where I don't want them running into the fields to go lay in low spots. I'll bed then and I'll spend the money on straw, but I've never really found that it made a huge difference. And as long as they can get out of the wind and they can get out of the dry or get out of the wet, it seems like they've been fine with it. So um, yeah, so I bet Everett maybe I would say a couple times a month, and just inside that silver barn. So the way I have it set up in there is there's an area the cattle can get in, and then it's fenced off. I'd say about a third, and then 2/3 of the barn is open for for uh, it's opened up so you can put equipment in there. Before me, there was the guy was storing equipment in that, and then at part of before he had equipment in it, he had, I believe, small squares. So there's these little doors across where he could move the elevator across so he could stack small squares. So the two doors that were on it ripped off in a windstorm before we got here, and I've been limited on labor, so I haven't been able to put them back on. And they're this weird system. I don't know if you guys have seen them where it's not a square rail. It's actually rounded, so it's round balls, and then it slides across. But it's been a bugger trying to find parts for it. And if you do find them, they're crazy. Like I priced out just the rail on top where the doors had come off, and it was like $200-300. I couldn't believe it for just that railing, and it's kind of a 2 to 3 man job just lining it up and trying to get it so that the actual door comes back actually slides back on. But yeah, was kind of what I was hoping to get done this year. But where this was going is that I store my tractor in there, so I just basically feed every couple days, and then they have an water that I did get set up. Um, I got it out of Western Ontario. Um, it's an auto water that has no electricity in it, and it's not a bad little system. It's outside and it hasn't been freezing up too bad. I do find that the paddles will get a little froze and then the air will get in there and then it'll freeze it. But I just kind of get the back of an axe handle and I pop it in ever so often. And if it gets really cold, I'll pour a little water on or hot water on um, the actual flow valve, and it usually opens it up pretty good. I Yeah, I just it's not bad. It kind of works like a toilet, honestly. It's basically a toilet valve that they've altered so that it allows it to flow in, and you're sitting it has an air tube that goes through the bottom, and then it allows hot air in it, and then it kind of keeps it warm enough. And halfway through this winter, it did freeze up on me pretty bad, and the hose shrank. So I ended up putting a T on it so that I could open up the top of the T and pour hot water down if I needed to. But overall, it's been pretty good. Yeah, I'll do a video on it too. Yeah, it's been a little slow on that, and it is working. They couldn't get used to putting their nose in it. The bull, because it's so close to the fence, they don't want to go sideways on it. So the bull was trying to basically put his nose in kind of horizontally, and it's at an angle, if you can imagine. So it's at an angle, and the flaps are down here. So what happens is his face barely fits in, and it took some training for them because they just never had an auto water before. They just always drank from either ponds or troughs. So they fought it tooth and nail. It was a lot harder getting them trained on the water than it was getting them trained on the electric fence. Um, so it was a bit interesting just trying to get them used to it. They're fine with it now, but I find a really easy way to tell if it's froze or not is if you see them starting to snow outside, you know that things froze up on them. And yeah, it's worked out pretty good, but I will say the plastic on the inside that holds between the two layers of foam isn't very thick because I basically was using the bottom of an axe, not the sharp part, but just the square part, just to kind of break out a little bit of ice. And lo and behold, oh, thanks for the thumbs up, whoever's here. Lo and behold, all it took was a little corner, and I ding that in, and I can see where it's dented in and it's broken. So I'm gonna have to patch that with tar next year. I'm not looking forward to it, but the where I was going with this is I'll put a link to it. The guys that where I got it from, and overall, I can't complain because it's half the price of what a new Richie water was. Like it was going to be $1,000 for me to put a Richie water in there, and I did not have electricity or the setup. And I got this out of Mennonite country, and it's called SPI water, and it works great overall. I will say, like I said, the flaps aren't great on it. So I'm pondering putting plywood and basically allowing it so that there's a bit of a lip on it so they can get their nose under and just open it up. But overall, it's not too bad. It's not too bad at all. It's it's been kind of going pretty good. And out where I am, it's been kind of snow most of the time, and then we get a little melt, and then it turns into a skating rink. So it's been interesting to say the least. I have been kind of working and kind of figuring out how I plan the next avenue and what works for me. And yeah, with the wood stove here, I'm kind of trying to set it up so I do wood because I've never really done wood before. We never heated with wood, so it's going to be interesting because just new to the system and new to the area. And I found out really quickly that wood is only really cut here in the spring. Um, and Yeah, so I went to go get a wholesaler in the fall, and they went, "Oh yeah, so I'd like to buy some seasoned wood," and they looked at me like I had three heads, saying, "Yeah, no, you can't buy that. That ain't here." So they want it was going to be wet wood, green wood into winter, so that didn't really work out as planned. Rob Pawn or just asked how the cattle situation is. Uh, just send me a little message there and kind of elaborate on cattle situation. I I don't know. Overall, my herd's good. We're a little weird on calving. I have a couple older cows, so um, yeah, they get off when they're older, so the cycles start going off. So when they're supposed to calve, they don't really calve. Um, so that's a bit weird, but overall, that's kind of the way it is. Hello from Georgia. Yeah, nice seeing you guys. Hello from Ontario. I don't know how it's going out in Georgia, but every time I watch you Southern guys farming, I do not envy the mud. That freaks the heck out of me watching you guys have cattle in that because I curse every time mud season comes around here, and it seems like you guys have a longer mud season than us because it seems like the winter seems is your mud season. But yeah, it's good. Yeah, cold up here. Oh, 80 degrees. That's not too bad. That's not frig. What was it? What is it now? I think it's negative. You're gonna have to uh excuse my Celsius to Fahrenheit because I don't know what the conversion is here. So it's about 5 degrees here outside right now, Fahrenheit, and it's about I don't know -10 Celsius. So, and yeah, I've just she's a little. I have a thermometer outside the window here, and it kind of lets me know how crappy the day's gonna be when you start up because yeah, it hasn't been as bad. February usually is crappy here, and it's cold. And this February wasn't too bad. January is when it got really fun, and you saw -20, -30 days at night, and yeah, that's when everything just freezes up, and half the day you're just working on thawing waters and plugging in equipment all the time. Um, what else has been going on? Overall, been good. I don't know if I have my truck. I had a little issue in that on the Ram there. The def decided to freeze on me. I don't know if you diesel guys have had that situation. So the def tank and the valve that puts it in decided to either crud up or freeze, and lo and behold, it says you have 100 kilometers to limp mode where you can do 8 kilometers an hour. So that wasn't fun. And I will tell you, I am not excited about Mopar slash Ram warranty because they still charge you even though it was under warranty, which I was pissed at the time because that's the whole point if you having a warranty, so you don't pay for this crap. But yeah, that's kind of been going on here, and yeah, it is what it is in the cold, and I've talked to multiple dealers, and it seems to be the common thing. So when those diesels start seeing fluctuations in temperatures, the def freezes, and yeah, and then they basically have to bleed out the tank and then clean out the injector, and yeah. Um, Overall, on the cattle front, everything's been good. I'm kind of pondering trying to get some more heifers in, bred heifers, but the Pinscowers are a lot harder to find. They're a lot more difficult to find purebreds. I am trying to go that realm. Part of the reason we had Herefords in was A, because that was kind of what we had before, and also because they were more readily available. They mix well with the Pinscowers, but in an ideal world, I'll try and get purebreds where I can, because it makes life a whole lot easier, and the the gains per day is better on them. We've kind of watched a couple cattle comparing them, even with a 50-50 cross where they were Hereford to a purebred Pinscower to the purebred bull. They just grow faster. They grow faster and they're stronger, and I'm amazed at the difference. They all look the same because the Pinsgauer genetics are so strong on those color traits that unless you really know like you know the herd, mine look pure enough where if you threw them in with a bunch of purebreds, you would not be able to do it. Um, did I ever get the Massey running? Okay, so the Massey 35 or 165. So there's one of the cab, and then there's one that's basically 35 with a loader. The 35 runs. I got that inside before freeze up. Um, it has a couple issues on it, but nothing crazy. The 165. Oh man. So that one I haven't got running. I was 50-50 on flipping it. I'll be honest with you, just because yeah, that tractor was more worn than the 35. But as someone that collects it, or someone I was looking to sell to someone that's either going to collect it or restore it, because it is the Perkins, which everyone seems to want, and it is yeah. The only thing I know some guys don't like is it is multi power, but yeah, that I never got it apart. So what happened with that? And this is why I like this YouTube stream thing is that cab had to come off, and where I am, it's hard finding people. So anybody my age or anybody that I know is working all the time. Just it is what it is up here. So everybody's working all the time. So it's hard getting people or hard asking for people to give you a hand because what ends up happening is they have to choose between working with you and spending time with their family when they work crazy hours. So it's been a bugger trying to get so I need someone to help me lift that off, the cab off, and then take the 3 point hitch arm off and then kind of dig apart through it. So it was partially apart before I had to move, and that made it even worse. So the answer is no. I'm hoping either I fix it up this year or I basically sell it. Um, but yeah, it did run. All that was wrong with it when I parked it was it needed a muffler, which was the big one, and then the 3 point hitch needed to work. So I'm assuming there was water in there because it was stored outside. So that's probably all it is. But yeah, so it is what it is. Right now, it's not running. The 35 I got inside. The 35 got a loader thrown on, and this was before me again, and the loader's too heavy for it. So I'm hoping to take that off, and it has a lot less hours. Um, so I'm hoping to kind of make that a runaround tractor. The only thing I don't like about the 35 is it has it has direct drive PTO, which is a bit of a which is a bit of a death trap. So you run something like a bush hog. The second you clank it in, it's in, and you have to like jam down the clutch to get the thing on. And even if you turn it off, it's still going to be spinning. So it's a bit of a hazard to say the least. But I'm hoping I can use it for either grinding feed or something like that, where I'm not too worried about it. I don't know if I showed. I got a green chopper this year, which I was really excited about because no one really makes them anymore. And I'm hoping to kind of copy what they do in Europe, where they green chop grass and then feed it to cattle. And that would be able to increase the number of cattle I can put on per acre. Because the fencing, I did a lot of fencing. So I have about, I would say about 15. No, it's more. It's about 20 acres fenced. And then I have another 5 to 8 that I have to fence. And then that'll be where I throw my heifers. And then I'll make kind of a runway that I can connect it once I want the heifers to be bred. But that's why I'm looking to get bred heifers right now, is because I can just throw them directly in the herd and the bull's not going to, it won't matter that my bull's in there all the time. So right now, I'm a little overdosed on bull power because I didn't know how much I was going to expand this herd, whether I was going to go wholesale, where I basically got to a large number, or I was going to go to farm to table. So right now there's basically two bulls in there for a herd that's like 10. Luckily, they like each other and it doesn't matter, but one's smaller than the other, so it's not a big deal. But yeah, we're a little over bull powered. But when I got the one cow, it came with a bull that wasn't off of my genetic line. So I was like, it's hard throwing at a bull. It's hard sending him to the stockyards because frig, that bull's worth money. So in hindsight, I probably should flip him because he's 2 years old. But I thought my bull was going to wear it a lot faster. But because wasn't on a big herd, it seems like he's just fine. And overall, they've been both good. And because they've been in the barnyard so much and I've been around them so much, the handling has really increased how docile they are around people, which has been a nice thing because our old farm, the fencing wasn't exactly stellar. So what happens is it had 40 acres fenced. So the second it got warm, they were like bullets and they were gone. They were out. The fencing wasn't good enough where I could really corral them. And they were out and they were gone and they were grazing for all summer. So they didn't see me all summer. They'd see me, but they weren't close enough where I was really there. I was just around. So they kind of got in their own little wild system. And then by the time fall came around and hay came in, then they'd become my friend again. But that kind of changed this year because the area that's fenced is a lot smaller now. So I'm around them more, and I've made a conscious effort to try and make sure that I am around them more, and I try and make sure that I basically make sure I'm around them so that they can kind of get used to it. I also got a gator for that reason. I keep calling it gator, but it's a Kawasaki mule because you have to kind of have a way to be a godsend for fencing. Um, where we were when this whole stuff happened, everything's basically sold out, and I couldn't get a used UTV to save my life. They were either crazy money, used up, beat up, or they they weren't available. So I ended up getting this Kawasaki Mule. And if anybody's ever looking for like a UTV, gotta be the most undervalued thing I've seen. If it's a work UTV and not like a fun run around, speed and do jumps, it's great. Um, it's absolutely. I got the Mule, the small one, so it's like maybe the size of a 550. Like it's only like 406 cc, and it was like 5 grand less than any other brand. And I just do not know. I don't. They aren't more popular. I just do not know. It has a dump box. It has 4 wheel drive. It's got rear diff. They're so nice to use. It's slow. I'll be honest with you. You're not speeding around, but if you just want to go check cattle, it's been great. This year we've had ice, so what happens is the snow would accumulate and it would freeze, and then the thing wouldn't go through it. So I just gave up on it about a month and a half ago because you just couldn't get through it. Either the tires would slip, or it would basically the ice would form and it would be hard snow ice, and it just wouldn't go through it. So originally, I was getting wood and pulling wood from the back of our farm with it, and even in the winter, it was great 4 wheel drive and the diff lock. It would get up hills that you wouldn't think it would, but it does, and it's so low center of gravity. It's worked well. I was pondering for a while between that and a Honda Rancher because I liked having the ATV because there's so many functions you can do with them, but the dump box won it for me, and I got told, oh yeah, this is the last one. So because I was talking to a dealer at the time, and so this is the last one we have, and I started asking around for other dealers, and they're like, no, we're sold out. We're sold out. So in Ontario, it was the last one in Ontario, and I just said, you know what? It's probably not the best decision I've ever had, but at the end of the day, if I didn't have that thing this year, I probably wouldn't have been able to get wood, and I probably wouldn't have been able to get any of that fencing done because I got a spinning Jenny on it, and I would just literally spin the wire out, and you could spin for miles as long as you went slow. You could spin for miles, and I just had two people helping me, and I would be able to basically just slowly. One guy would run the gator, one guy would make sure the spinning Jenny didn't spin too fast and basically spin off, but it ran a lot of fence a lot faster. So um, it's been a lifesaver, absolutely. I was gonna cheap out and get the basic one, but they didn't have it left. So for some reason, I got the camo one. For anybody to ask or anybody asked, it wasn't by my plan. It was because it was the last one. But it's cool enough looking, and it's nice that it's got the Rhino liner in the box because I probably would have dinged it up by now. Just throwing wood in there because the wood's so heavy, and I try to be careful with equipment, but I do end up dinging it up pretty good and all that good stuff. And yeah, so that's kind of what I've been up to. This is an older house too, so I've been trying to kind of work around here, but it's been slow on work too. So I've just kind of it's been a weird winter because it's just been kind of chill life because you're not trying to do too much, but also um, you're also trying to be conservative because who knows what's coming next week. I didn't make a crazy amount of hay this year. Um, I did my so the farm we have here, there was enough hay for just enough maybe for my cattle. I might have to buy a little bit, but I didn't make anywhere near as much as I wanted because what ended up happening was is our the guy that was supposed to do custom work for me decided to shaft me. So he was supposed to custom plant all my fields and decided to shaft me the week of when it was ready to go. So when I was supposed to get everything planted last year, it got dinged. So I had to look around and find my way around a planter. And if you guys have seen, I'm limited on tillage equipment, so it's kind of been hacked because you yeah, I didn't want to till the crap out of the land, but also I was limited. So I was using a disc for a while, just trying to break it down. And I got 2 fields planted, and the soil I have here is totally different from the stuff at home. The dog thinks he's a guard dog. We're on a small little street, so he is bored out of his mind. He used to be on a busier road, so he'd be occupied by cars all the time. So he'll hear a Jake break 5 miles away and think that's entertaining. But so I still have a bunch of fields to do, and I have all the seed, which makes it all the worse. And I didn't get it planted this year. But where I was going with this story is the areas I dissed, it didn't make any difference. I might as well have just direct seeded it in, and that seems like a dirty idea where you're planting into weeds. But if you start mowing it, the weeds can't build up the seeds in the seed bank, what we consider the soil. And it ends up being that it worked out great. I planted some in the pasture alfalfa mix the pasture hay mix. Um, so it was good. I wish I listened to myself and less of other people sometimes, because I got told, oh yeah, you don't want to be planting that for every hayfield. And let me tell you, I should have done that, because I planted alfalfa Timothy as the other mix, and it's nowhere near as nice. There's more dead spots. There is alfalfa is more finicky, and as I said, I have more loamier with stones here, so it dries out fast. So if you till the crap out of the land, it just dries right out. And I came from an area where it was more clay, so it was always wet. So as long as you can get on it, you could till it and then you could plant. So it's a bit different, but I can direct seed in here, so that's been good. So the plan is to plant a bunch of hay next year, but where I was finding is it kind of takes 2 years to establish. So what I'll be tinkering with is planting either oats and peas or millet, and more leaning towards millet, because millet I can do one cut, so I can basically seed my hay in with the millet, and then the millet will grow up as long as you don't overplant it, and you can dry hay that in the first year. And it seems like the only thing where I can dry hay it. I'm not a big silage wrap guy, because the cost of wrapping basically kills any of the benefits, and it's heavy on the equipment, and it's wet, it's heavy on the equipment, and I find that it's just not worth it. It's not like you save a crap ton of money where you do it, and everyone went gung ho on this silage idea. And for me, I've penciled it out, and it works out to roughly about between 7 and 10 a bale. And if you pencil that out between a building, you've basically bought yourself a building. When you do silage, you've bought yourself a building on dry hay. I understand, guys, areas where it's wet, where you're getting rain all the time, but I've always found that you're able to get the hay in as long as you work at it. You should be able to get it in, and it's been not bad. I looked at getting one of those toe behind silage wrappers, or one that you put on a 3-point hitch. I've pondered that idea so I could do a couple bales, but I've been looking, and I'd have to get a loader clamp for it, and that adds up. So the one I looked at, the cheap one, was about 10 grand, and they dropped down to about 8. Um, um, so it's kind of it'd be, and then the used grapple is like 3,500. I almost dropped a jaw, but yeah. So that's kind of what we've been looking at. I like millet because millet has low input costs, where sorghum Sudan, which is hot season, um, is a lot higher. It's dang near corn for how much nitrogen you got to put down. So if you're in Georgia, there, I guess like you said, you're doing Bahia down there, and then that. Let me just read this. Yeah. So interesting. Okay. So I like watching guys from the south too, because I find that you guys, instead of you guys having hot season annuals or hot season perennials, we have like a month of that. So where I am, it's so humid that there's 1 month, maybe month and a half, where it's like that, and it's basically a swamp here. The humidity is so high that you basically can't do anything outside, and all the cold season grasses die off basically. So I've been pondering it, but The nitrogen poisoning thing freaks the heck out of me. The nitrate poisoning in sorghum Sudan, and I know there's some that don't have it, but I just don't like screwing with it. So around here, the hay market is not like that at all. So it's up and down like a toilet seat. If you have a year where you have a dry year, everybody wants it, and it's great, and everything moves, and everybody pays a decent price. You get a wet year where everybody got their crop off, everyone thinks you're going to take a loss on it, and you might as well just not sell it that year. And my market has dramatically changed. Here, let me get my charger to charge my computer here. Oh, okay. So, where I was saying my market has totally changed. So, the area I was in central Ontario was all horse guys. So, mostly thoroughbred farms. And what wasn't was either dressage or it was expensive horse farms that people had as estates. So, they didn't mind paying for quality and they didn't mind if it was worth the value. Where I moved here, it's more of a farming community and it's more viewed as a commodity. So last year, they were shipping in from Quebec hay because it was just not around. And because the soil's lighter here, when you get a dry spell at the wrong time, it just wipes it and the hay's basically gone. So it's a learning thing because it's totally different. And you've probably dealt with this too in the variances between your different crops and different fields. But here, I find that you can't cheap out in fertilizer. On clay, I could cheap out on fertilizer. And as long as you didn't literally have a blowtorch across your field, you could grow hay. It didn't matter how dry it was. I had one year where I first got the rake and it was so dry, I thought it was lawn clippings. And I did not even think it was worth raking. And at that time, I picked up an extra 30 bales. Where here, I had one dry first cut. It was nothing. It was a fraction because that loam dried out and the sand content just dried right out and sucked any nutrients in, and any roots couldn't get any water, and it was done. It was absolutely done. And that's kind of the way it goes around here. So I'm looking at trying to increase organic matter. That's kind of the plan here, but I don't have a lot of cattle to do it. So I've been looking for wet manure, liquid manure, which is the best way to add organic matter on the cheap. But it's not around because the dairy guys aren't here. In my area, in Ontario, usually where you're getting liquid manure is uh, is dairy guys. So they don't know what to do with it all, and they bring their heavy tankers on your land, and they get rid of it, but they leave marks because the things are so heavy. But you shut your mouth because it's cheap fertilizer and it's around, and it's really good for organic matter. Here, I'm amazed because they have dairy farms that are on standing stalls, which are basically banned um, in central and southern Ontario. I know you guys, or you wouldn't know this in the States, but we have a dairy monopoly here. And I say the word monopoly politely. So when the dairy board doesn't like you or doesn't like your operation, they kick you to the curb because it's like a big group. And the bigger you are, the more they like you. So the way Ontario is kind of set up is southern and southwestern Ontario is where a lot of your big dairy guys are. Central Ontario is where, if you see the GTA of Toronto, and then out around it within, I would say 200 or 100 kilometers, I'd call that central. You have big farms that have been there for generations, and they have always had a lot of land and a lot of dairy, and they were just already established. And then Eastern Ontario and North have smaller dairy operations that are less size, but they just don't have the size yet, so they just never got as big. And here, as I said, they're smaller, so they can have dry manure, but they don't have huge silage tanks. So I've been up without a paddle. So I've looked at chicken fertilizer, chicken manure, and that was a cheap way. Um, but it's not, it burns. So I'd like to mix that with cattle manure so that it doesn't burn as bad, or get it in bulk where it'd break down. But I haven't really figured that out. On the fertilizer front, if you have to order fertilizer and you haven't done it by now, you order it tomorrow, because this whole Russia Ukraine thing, it's going to get nasty. And the amount, uh, I don't know how much the states brings in, but the amount of potash that Russia exports is scary. They're the second biggest in the world. And I thought Canada was big. We're peanuts. We're a third the size. So if we have to bring in artificial fertilizers, it's going to be scary. And it's going to be really expensive, and it's going to test a lot of farmers this year on whether cash crop is worth it, because it's over 1,000 a ton here, and it's your potash is way up there too. I saw it skyrocket on the chart, and I don't know. I don't think I've seen anything like this for that type of skyrocket and jump. And I understand the grain prices are up, but the way Canada kind of splits up, most of the wheat that's grown for soft wheat, which goes into your bread and stuff, is all out Western Ontario or Western Canada. So we get hard drum wheat here, and it's in smaller portions. So our west will have a lot more wheat. They do all their oat. A lot of the oats are grown out west, and I would say a lot of the cereals except oats. So oats, barley, and canola is all grown out there. Here, it's non-existent compared to the size out there. So when they were always working on smaller margins, because they had to do more acres because land was cheaper. But when they have to pencil in this year the amount it's going to cost them for fertilizer over 1,000 acres, because that's the way it is out there, I would not be shocked to see bankruptcies or major bailouts to try and be able to get crop in the ground. Like this, in my view, this is going to be like the '80s when a lot of farms went down because when the four-wheel drive whole thing went happen, so everybody had to go big or go home. It's going to be like that. So it's a scary day. I will say that. So I hopefully it all gets in. Um, I haven't done a video on this, and maybe you have this in the states. But I would look into, if you haven't ordered fertilizer, into Milorganite. That's what they call it down like where you guys are, or up here they call it Nutripel, because that is an option and it's more economical than you'd think. It's a totally different system. You're not going to be able to use a standard fertilizer spreader buggy, but you just have, usually they have their own that's set up for it. That is a very good system, and when you do the math on it, it works out to 5400, but there's a lot of trace micronutrients in it, and there's a lot of organic matter. You'd be amazed how far that goes, because 544, and they in my area suggest between 1 and 2 tons to the acre. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. It's a lot closer to the traditional fertilizer than you think, and that could get you through a pinch, and that could get you at least the crops in the field. Up here, we have a few plants, but I'm still trying to kind of figure it out, because being new to an area, you basically have to figure out who's going to help you, who's not, and where you find all of your utilities. And for farming here, it's very hard for me not just to go and say, I'll just drive the extra time and do the extra drive for getting stuff processed, for going to get equipment, because I miss it a lot. I miss going out to Western Ontario, which is Mennonite country, and dealing and basically doing business over there because everything works well. So I'm trying my best to create new connections and kind of get going. Um, so it's a different experience. I'll ask you, Georgia, what kind of cattle do they have down there mostly? What's more popular? Most of the time when I see Southern guys working, I see Angus galore. So I wondered what you guys typically have down there for breeds and genetics, because I've seen guys use Brahmin and mix Brahmin in there, which is a very interesting concept. Or I'm truly surprised that there isn't more Hereford down there, or the Blaze cattle, from what I've seen anyway. I only get to see it on YouTube. I learn everything on this thing. So I'd love to know the difference down there of what genetics they're using because uh, it's a totally different system. And I watch guys do silage down there, and it's a totally different system. But it's not that different. Like, um, yeah, that's what I thought. Do you find that the Anguses overheat? That they basically because they're black skin, like that they get too warm? I get so nervous about that because I have a few here that are what I'd call a blaze, and I wonder how they don't sweat to death. Oh, really? Shars too, eh? So that's where it is here. So where I am, everybody wants. If I was to go into a conventional marketing system, they want Charlets. They want Charlets, almost all exclusively purebred Charlets. And I've found in my experience that they eat you out of house and home. I have a few family members that have them, and you have usually the better the genetics, the more calving issues you have, and the eating aspect because they just don't seem very efficient, but they do get bigger size. And the finisher guys here always want them because they get a bigger size. But I'm surprised honestly because um, um, I'm surprised that they do because when you add up the amount of feed they take in, like it's hard to pencil it. Um, when I was doing research before, at one point I was looking before I had to go or I had to move and stuff. I was looking at doing a finisher herd and just basically putting a finisher herd on and then finishing them out through the summer on grass and then flipping them in the fall. And the dinging that you get at the stockyards on Herefords, I couldn't believe it. How much cheaper they were, and even and even when you went to go sell them, because it was like you could have perfect cattle, and because they weren't white, there were certain guys that just were not going to touch it. And then you'd see something that would go through the yards that was caked in manure, and you're going, oh, that, and it would sell better than show level Hereford and Angus. I'd say Hereford. Angus was more if you were the right guy, they didn't mind buying them, but the blacks go through. But I found that I was a little surprised on how that went. But I've seen them mixed where they put so they would do an F1 cross of Hereford into Charlet. And when you say when you say balancer bull, are you talking about you're trying to lower birth weights? Because I most of the time when I look at EPDs, that's what I'm looking at is birth weights and gains per day. So I kind of wondered on that. Yeah, because that's what gets the Pinsgauers too is birth weight. If you put a young heifer on there at their too young of an age, they're too fertile, and you'll have trouble. You will have trouble, and their backs are long. So they have these long backs, which makes great for finishing meat out. But I will tell you, when you're pulling on them, it sucks because it just seems to keep going when you're pulling calves out. But I don't. I try to avoid it, and I try my best. But now, okay, it's a breed. Okay, I'll have to look them up. I haven't heard a whole lot about them. Um, I have not heard a lot about them. I'll have to look them up. Um, but interesting. Um, but yeah, that's kind of what we do here. It's kind of so for perspective, the cattle industry, a lot of cattle now. Oh, okay. I didn't know that they considered that a breed. Okay, I've seen those the Gavilas, the purebred Gavilas here, in fields and stuff, and they're a nice looking bull. I don't know a whole lot about them. They're not far off the Pinsgauer line because they were a dual purpose at one point in Germany, in Europe, in Bavaria specifically, Bavaria, Sweden or Switzerland, and they're not far off. I think a lot of guys like them because they're more of a solid color too. Um, they seem to be a nice bull, and it makes sense that they're breeding with the Angus to drop that birth weight. Um, because yeah, so that's the ideal situation that I've seen. If you can get it, is the one quarter, 1/4 low birth weight breed with 3/4 of the gains per day, or your bigger breeds, and it seems to finish out nice. You get that lower birth weight as well as all of the benefits of the lower birth weight. Sometimes you get that hybrid vigor, which is nice, and you get to you get, usually they look almost pure, if they're anything like mine, and you can barely tell the difference. One thing we have is the white stripe and then the white head. So the Hereford white head comes in a lot. You can't get rid of that, but ever so often that pops in on a calf, and you're like, crap, it kind of knocks away at the breed. But where I am at now is I'm really trying to get away from selling anything at the stockyards, and we're trying to make it so that we sell everything for meat. So it's 100% grass fed and doing the grass fed market, because that seems to be where it works well with our small farm. Also doing chickens and turkeys has done well, and we did pigs in the past. Um, and I probably will do pork again. That was a lot. It was a really enjoyable experience. Um, with the way our farm's set up, I find that we get caught in the middle between, are you going to go big, or are you going to go what I'd say like small farmers market niche where it's farm to table? Because setting up that marketing system or setting up a marketing plan is a whole new ball game, and it's just trying to get constant flow where you get people to put either deposits down or get people to have an idea of how much you need in product. And this year was an absolute nightmare for it, because we had chickens and turkeys, which we used to do, and we still do it, but with the stuff that happened here, and people got locked down. I don't know if you ever saw that on the news with Ontario. They basically shut the place down for 2 years on and off. People were scared to leave their house, and they basically canceled 2 Christmases and 2 Easters. So the sales for chickens and turkeys, which were on the larger side, ended up being to nothing, because everyone said, I'm not even where no one's getting together. So it just basically stopped it all. And you get kind of stuffed on it, and you basically are holding the bag on it, because they had said, I'm sorry, we have to. And it's an awkward call for everyone, but it is what it is. But yeah, so hopefully we get through this and the world kind of calms down, and um, we can basically go back to it, because that was working pretty well. And I find it's, for me personally, I found that it was a lot better for my nutrition, and I found that it was healthier for my family. Everybody's got their views on that, but I just found that my stomach seemed to do well on it when we were doing the grass fed stuff. And yeah, it's a harder, not sale. It's more difficult where I am here because the demographics aren't the same. So um, if you are in Georgia, it's like living near Atlanta. So if you're within an hour of Atlanta, there's a lot more money in Atlanta than there is the rest of Georgia. And from what I know, anyway, it's the same with Toronto. When the farther you get away from the circle, the less money and the less conscious or health conscious and more niche products demand there is. So you end up having to truck more stuff, or you have to try and market it at a wider net. Um, because that's the way it is. And where I was before, it was easy. You literally would talk to people through friends and neighbors, and the second they found out that you had quality meat products, it was not hard to move. It was easy. And for me, it was the grass fed aspect was always taking longer to produce. So it ended up being that you had to plan 2 years out for grass fed, so 24 months. And where we are, um, 24 months, but also you have to plan out for kill dates. And you had to also, at 24 months, you had to do a spine, I think they call it a spine test, where they had to test for BSE. So you wanted to keep it under 24 months, because then that test would cost you, and the way they process it would cost you. Um, Oh, really? Okay. That's crazy. I looked out there, not seriously, but I looked up on that panhandle for land at one point, just seeing what the costs were. So up like near between Georgia and Florida. I had looked out there for cattle land at one point because I thought about economically if it would be viable out there because the land was there and it's more flat and you could do stuff and yeah, it seemed like good land and it seemed like there's a lot of cattle out there and that's interesting. I would never have guessed that you were that, but I guess America's set up differently. But yeah, that's interesting. Um, yeah, so I know there was a lot of cattle up there, and yeah, it's small world. We driven through it a few times, going to Florida and all that stuff, and it's cool stuff. It seems like it's nice land out there, and it seems less hilly than going through some of like the northern south where you're going through for Pennsylvania or Tennessee or Kentucky. Um, yeah, it seems like it's a little less hilly because hills are fun as long as they're cheap in my mind. So that's why we have a four-wheel drive tractor is because if you don't have that four-wheel drive and you're not over horsepowering your stuff, you will be rolling down it. And that baler and that mower, it's everything to hold it down. Yeah. Um, so I'm basically similar, not quite the same level as I was at the other farm, but there's enough hills here where you want four-wheel drive. I wouldn't even consider two-wheel driving. Um, I what? Yeah, interesting. Um, I yeah, so that's kind of it's interesting. If you're ever wondering what it's like here, and as I said, I never find you can get enough in the videos. If you're ever wondering what, not quite to the fanciness level, if you've ever been through Kentucky and you were okay, so I was in when I visited, I went to Lexington, so not quite Lexington fancy, but that level, that was the area. That's basically what the area was when where the old farm was. So we're the only ones really very limited left that were farming, not horse and write off stuff. A lot of it was horse guys like that. So the hills were very similar. And when I went down through the south on my trip, I was so disappointed with Kentucky because when I went through, I was like, this is literally like being at home. It's not very different. You have rolling hills with thoroughbreds. It's very similar. That's a small world. Um, yeah, so interesting. Um, what was I gonna say? For on the cattle front, how does it work where you guys are? Do cattle get shipped? So when you guys finish stuff out, does it get shipped north to the East Coast, or does it get shipped more to California on that side? I'd be really intrigued to see how the flow works because over here, what ends up happening is a lot of cow calf guys are not where I am. They're actually at West, and they ship cat. There'll be truckers that'll ship cattle from the West, and they'll ship it to the East or Central Ontario. And there used to be a fair amount of money made that way, where they'd pick up cheap cattle out West, and then they'd ship it here, and then guys would either finish it or they would get new cattle and they'd pick it up at a discount, especially unfortunately this year because there was a major drought out there. And yeah, so there was a lot. There was at one point, it was really sad because that's what was happening. Is people were selling their herds because they couldn't get either water or they couldn't get hay. And it's still, from my knowledge, it's still that way. Yeah, I wouldn't wish it on anyone because that was a big reason we got into hay was to try and stabilize that. We had other people doing our hay custom, and you were at mercy to someone else's on the quality. So you were always last, and you never really got the best quality. And then, yeah, I found that you couldn't really be. It wasn't reliable. You always had to be searching for guys like you were doing them a favor to find guys to do custom here, and yeah, it was difficult. So I just bit the bullet and said, you know what, if I have to get into this and do hay so that my cattle have constant hay and good quality hay, I'll do it. And I found that it made a world of difference. I found that my cattle looked nicer through the winter. I found that I didn't have to pound minerals like a lot of other guys did, and you didn't have the skinniness in the winter. I wish I had a little bit of silage sometimes just to kind of add some fat, but um, yeah, yeah, interesting. Um, okay, yeah, that makes sense. So they basically would ship to Midwest where they would finish. So they'd ship into the Corn Belt. Um, yeah, so interesting, interesting. So um, where we are here, there's a bottleneck when it comes to processing. So the processors, there's a lot less of them. There's a lot of legislation that went through in the last 20 years that made it very difficult to be a cattle processor or even a butcher. We call them arbitroirs up here, and an arbitroir and a butcher basically chops it up once it's already processed. An arbitroir is the one that actually does the processing and does from walking to not walking. And a lot of guys got out of it. So during the last situation or the last um, uh, I can't get around it. So the last lockdown, what happened was a lot of the big guys, cattle guys, went to small processors and dumped all their cattle, and you couldn't get a processing date. A lot of them were backed up like 2 years to try and get anything processed. So it's been a bit crazy, and it's funny because where Toronto is the biggest city, the GTA is the biggest in all of Canada. And do you think that you would have like a processing and supply? Yeah, no. So you basically they relied on everything to be brought in, and it would cheese me off to no end. Because they would basically think it was cheaper to bring from out west, ship it in, than just process, make it here, grow it here, and process it here. And even in high end butcher shops, it was like that. It was a very awkward question because you would ask if it was Ontario grown, and you would find out very quickly it was all Alberta. And don't get me wrong, I got nothing against Alberta, but for me, it make more sense to have a process system where you're growing it within province and then you're processing it and finishing it within province to feed your own people. It makes it so that you don't have huge production stops. Um, you said that they have the Walmart program there or the Packer there. Does Walmart in the states have a program with the Angus Association? I know up here that's really what they've pushed. Walmart has really been pushing with the Angus Association, and almost all of Walmart meat here or beef has Angus written on it somewhere, shape, or form. Um, I can't. I did not know that Walmart had its own packer. I thought that that would have been done through like the big three, but it does make sense. I know they've been getting into like they've been getting more into up here like the last 10, 15 years. They've been more into grocers and expanding their grocery stores with their superstores. So it's very interesting that they um, you probably don't know this, but the Walmart here, you always make jokes that they'd go, you'd go to the States for Walmart stuff and you'd buy it in the States for Walmart if you're going to shop at Walmart because there's a quality difference between Canadian Walmart and American Walmart. You would never think it, but yeah, there is. It's night and day. We get a lot of stuff here where it's not good quality. And don't get me wrong, I understand you're going there for price value, but um, okay. They okay. Uh, okay, I thought that it would have been someone like Cargill or one of those ones. I don't know 44 Farms. I'll have to look them up. So, um, or yeah, so that's interesting. Um, yeah, it's been an interesting 2 years. I so now this year I've been kind of pondering. Maybe you'd have a little experience on this. I've been looking into balers a little bit too. I'm looking to upgrade my silage special, my 457. Um, Currently looking at a Coon only because the price of John Deere balers is just highway robbery. I looked at getting just even so the next series. So the 459 is basically not really much change. So there's no point in me just upgrading to a 459. And the innovation of what the European balers offer compared to what the North American ones do is night and day. And so I was looking at Coon balers a little bit, and I was looking at Kverneland slash Kubota because I couldn't for the same price for a used baler. It wasn't much more for me to trade it in and get a little. It was a little more money to upgrade to that baler, and yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. But my dealer that I used to go to that was closer to the old place, there was two balers, um, two balers that they sold, and I said, "Oh, those are nice balers," thinking that they were like 60 grand. The guy, it was 105 each. I almost dropped a jaw because it's just I don't know how it pencils, and it was absolutely insane. And I just quietly said, "Oh, that's really nice," and walked out because yeah, John Deere balers are nice, but they are not, in my view, for the quality bales. They make a nice hard bale, which I liked in the 457, and even up to the 459. But they changed them when they went to the new ones. Okay. The 504N, is that the one where the belts kind of half spin so you can see through it, or is that a newer 554N? Because yeah, I had an uncle that had that baler, the older one, and he'd actually switched to one like mine. It was a 467, so it was one that was taller. But they could make any size bale they wanted, and he loved it because it was a tighter bale. Um, but yeah, I wondered that about those belts because those belts were crazy money at one point because Vermeer was the only one kind of using them for that baler, and yeah, they were insane if you ever broke one. I if you've ever seen it, that self okay, they are they yeah, that's good because they yeah, I wasn't a fan of that idea. I would love to see one of those self-propelled balers in action. If I could convince, there's only a couple Vermeer dealers up or dealers up here, so there's not a lot around. If I could convince one of those guys to demo, let me tell you, I'd be getting it here because it's just an incredible idea of being. I'm surprised it isn't a big square system, like where it's not a big square baler behind it, because it would make total sense because it doesn't roll. But they put a round baler on it. It's cool. I think those things are cool beyond belief. Um, I'd ask you maybe if you guys out there, do you see a lot of European hay equipment in Georgia area? I see in the states. It, See in the states, I see there's certain areas where they really push European equipment, and I'm just here. You can't get the parts for them, and I wondered if they did it in the south where they were trying to hit a price number because I looked at a couple different pieces, and I that's what always kills it every time is I cannot get the parts. My Landini, when Landini switched from Agco, so it used to be its own thing, and then it got bought up, and the parts were actually coming out of Georgia. And it wasn't bad there because it was only like a 2 day ship. When they had to ship stuff from Italy, which is the way it is now, it is a nightmare to get parts for the thing. Absolute nightmare. Um, That's funny about the New Holland stuff. I always keep my mouth shut because yeah, I've never had good luck with New Holland at all. And every time I deal with it or I'm around it, it always comes up the same. Whether it's the tractors or it's the balers or anything, they always try and reinvent the wheel and make it more complicated than it needs to be. Yeah, every time. Every time. I had a buddy that he only had New Holland equipment, and he had a brand new baler, a brand new New Holland baler that he did for custom hang, and he was bigger than me, and he bought New Holland because there was New Holland dealer close enough, and I was I went up to the bales, and what I do to kind of tell stiffness, because I like stiff bales because you can stack them. So when you stack them in barns, they don't dump on you. I was so disappointed that the cores were soft, going like, this is a brand new baler. It should not be this soft. And yeah, and even like as I said, even the tractors, they're just expensive, and I find that they try and reinvent the wheel too much, and it's just not worth it. But I guess now with Case IH being involved, you're kind of getting a similar product either way, like Case IH, and depending on where it's made or what trim level it is. Yeah. So, because yeah, so I've been mulling over way too many ideas, so I can spin on for hours because I looked at one point to investing into a case tractor because here the Maxims, yep, yep, that's the way you want it. Very few chains. I always like it when the chains are short because it always means that I don't have to have stretched chains, and because long chains are always scaring the crap out of me. Like I said, that's why I looked at the Kuhn ones a bit because the chains were huge, absolutely enormous, and it was overbuilt. And it was a couple extra grand from what I would sell my John Deere for with high acreage on it. So I got that baler, and it's been a great baler. But like I said, it's got little kinks that I'm not in love with. But overall, for feeding hay, it's been great. I can use my windrower or my V rake, and it merges great, and I can put 2 rows into it. The net wrapper has issues all the freaking time, which for feeding issues. When it's going great, but when you get it started, it always wants to fight you. And the other thing is too, I find that the knife, I don't know if it's from the moisture from the winter or what, but that knife gets a little rusty or it gets a little corroded, and it doesn't want to cut. So I have to, every time I bale, I have to basically look even after the thing's beeped to make sure that it's stopped. And you have to look through a hole about this big to see if it's stopped and that you don't see more net wrap going on. Because one time it literally rolled like a half a thing of net wrap on that thing on me because I was getting used to it. I didn't realize it until it started to feel, it was just still spinning even after it beeped on the screen. And I was livid because you can't see it because the cutting knife is at the back. So especially at night, because you always get going and you go and thinking, oh yeah, you can get the rest of it done through the night. Unless you have really good lights, you can never see it good enough. And I found it always got tough, so I try and avoid it. But yeah, it was an expensive day when that happened to me on the John Deere baler. Yeah, I saw that trick with the baby powder. It's I've watched oh come on, the rest of the story there, and their balers at John Deere once got the same similar net wrap thing with the powder thing, and I always forget about the baby powder during the time because I'm always sweaty and hot, and you just want to get the thing in. But yeah, the gap spacing between where that rubber roll and where the net wrap has to go through is so thin that you're continuously trying to jam it in. And then when you finally get it in, you get excited because you think you got it figured out. You put it on and you try and roll it, and it doesn't work. And then you say, okay, I'll try and do it again. And after the fifth or sixth time, you give up and you just say, yeah, I'm not doing this. If you'll notice, any of my bales this year are twine wrapped, even though it's slower and nowhere near as efficient. I got so pissed off with the net wrapper. There's a brand new roll of net wrap in the thing. And I got so pissed off that yeah, I just went, yep, I'll just run twine. Holy man, what's going on, Ted? Oh crap! I guess I better calm down on the Case IH talk, just in case Ted hears, because no, I joke because I actually every time I watch Ted stuff, that Magnum, I have a bunch of friends that have that exact same tractor, and they love them. The only thing I ever had an issue or I saw an issue with is we had a family member that had one, and they were using it as a plow truck or a snow plower in Quebec. because it was so heavy. So they'd use them on roads, and you don't really know this until you buy it. So for guys, Quebec is one province over, and a lot of Ontarians buy cheap equipment out of Quebec because for some reason it has horrible resale value over there. And it's about 600 kilometers from where I am, 5, 6. And it's a good place for cheap equipment. And I ponder it every time. Every time I go looking for tractors, I say, "Oh, what kind of case tractors can I pull out of Quebec?" And as I said, I had it. He didn't know it, but that's where they think it came out of. And it broke a gear inside the transmission. Supposedly it wasn't big; it was a small gear. It was like 4 months. The thing was apart on stands, waiting for parts coming over from Italy because it had to come over from Italy, and I guess they didn't have it, or they didn't stock it, or what. And I, it was their main. Luckily, it was winter, but they choked a lung on how much that one gear was. Once it was back together, it's been running fine. But yeah, um, yeah. So I always get jealous of the big tractors, and I always think, oh man, I should do one of these days. I should get a bigger tractor going that ran my baler. I have that 2+2 if you guys have watched, and I was running it. It was going great, and then all of a sudden, it blew a rad hose at the bottom of it. I thought, oh yeah, just a loose clamp, and I went to go change the oil this year, and lo and behold, I saw coolant in the oil, and went, oh good lord, and um, yeah. So it basically got parked under my hay tarp or my hay thing, and I haven't touched it because I was trying to find a used engine for the thing, and it was expensive. It was crazy expensive. I was hoping I could just throw it in because they put the wrong engine in it. They put a um DT 466B in it, which I think came out of a dump truck, and I was just thinking I could swap it. And yeah, I guess because they're getting older, they're more expensive to put in. So I have to do an overhaul on that, and I just don't have a spot where I have concrete. I'm hoping I can convince. I have someone in mind that I hopefully can convince him to work on it during the winter inside. He's got a shop that's concreted because I don't want to take it apart to find out that there's dust everywhere because I have dirt floors on every freaking building here, and I don't want to take it apart to muck it up worse. So I'm hoping I can take it out and take it apart and then reline it and all that good stuff and put it back together. And that's kind of the plan on that. And that's the plan was I was actually going to make that on my mower tractor. So I was going to put the mower on that because the mower is crazy heavy. And then I would basically not have to swap equipment all the time between the mower and the baler because it's a 540 to 1,000. The mower is 1,000 and the baler is 540. And that fun gets old real quick when it starts raining and you have to recut an area, or you have to recut an area and you have to redo another field, and you have to go from a baler to a rake to a mower all in the same day, and you realize you're pouring away a lot of time just switching between tractors. So that was kind of the plan on that, and I had picked that tractor up relatively cheap, which is the way it goes. And I'm trying my best not to finance everything, trying my best, but yeah. So actually, maybe Ted would know this. I'm looking at older combines, and I know that's a death statement, but I don't know a whole lot on combines. Um, what would you gear me to if I'm trying to be kind of price conscious on combines? Brand doesn't matter to me. I don't mind if it's a Gleaner, whether it's a Case IH, whether it's whether it's a John Deere. It's just more or less trying to keep the number not crazy high. I really don't want to buy a crazy combine because where I am, I always find that custom guys are either crazy money or they are unavailable. And every time I try and get anything done, it never happens, or I can't afford to custom it. 1680. Okay. Good talking to you, Georgia Swampman. As I said, I should probably plan these better and make it so that I let people know that this is happening. I might actually do another one tomorrow night and just put a little schedule on it. And yeah, the 1680, is that similar to? Is it this? Okay, there's the 1400 series. I'm gonna have to Google this. 1680. Okay, 1680. Oh, okay. Yeah, those those aren't a bad combine. Those yeah, I've seen those things. Oh, okay. Um how do you find that thing for getting through fence rows? I find that a lot of because in Ontario the fields are narrower, so everybody puts in 16-foot fence posts. Oh, so you don't want to go. Oh, okay, you're pretty good with the. Okay. I see some of this stuff come across. There's auction houses that like bringing this stuff over from the west and shipping it into my area. And I, I wondered because do you find that you need four-wheel drive on them, or is that a nice option but you can survive without? Because I see them. Okay, here's a prime example. So there's a 1680 sitting at Push Lynch, which is Brian's Farm Supply, and that's just outside of Guelph. And right now, in our Canuck bucks, that's seven. They're asking 17.9. I just didn't know if you needed four-wheel drive. I've been meaning to ask. I've been meaning to ask Brad at Larson Valley as Oliver Farm Boy 66 because I know they're on the smaller scale, and I just don't know the difference between the brands. I know that Case IH, their big thing is they seem to have a very proud following. Okay. Um. So, I was talking to Georgia Swampman a little bit about it, and I'm kind of pondering getting into cash crops a little bit. And where I am, we have some hills, but it's lighter soil, and I'm trying to do shorter day crops. And I'm pondering getting a combine and kind of working with a couple guys. Um, yeah. Okay. Um, yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Um, yeah. So I just didn't know because I know corn here. A lot of the time, corn gets harvested in the winter. So after it snows, they harvest the corn here, and okay, I'll take a look at that. Um, do you find that there's any difference really between brands? Like, is there in technology, has there been that much variance between something like a Massey or a Gleaner of its same era, or was it more brand loyalty, or even John Deere? Because I just didn't know, and I I don't care about brands. I really don't. I could paint it purple for all I care as long as it works. And I just didn't know. I know that Case IHs and the John Deeres are more around here. There isn't really as many Gleaners anymore, and Massey Ferguson are almost non-existent now. A lot of the dealerships basically folded, so there's like two of those in Ontario. But I've seen some like if you're going older into like your 550s and your 650s of Masseys or okay, they are similar then. Um, yeah, yeah, so that's kinda where I'm at, and, I'm just trying to I didn't know if it's more common to find them with both heads, if it came with a corn head as well as a bean head or a grain head, if that's more common or if Because a lot of them, I'll tell you what happens, Ted, is a lot of them come from out west, and they have the one where it basically is pre-cut, so everything's pre-cut, and it goes up the elevator or the elevator chain with the fingers, and it just comes in, and that's every time I can tell them coming from out west because we just don't have canola or anything like that here, so um, a lot of guys that I see anyway combine with a grain head for soybeans. So that's kind of where I'm at, and that's kind of what I was looking at, and I just okay, and it tears it up pretty good. So when you're saying baling straw, you're talking mostly wheat. Um, there is a bit of wheat here, but it's more in my new area is a lot more prevalent for wheat. But there in my old area, nobody did wheat. Nobody at all. It was either corn or soybeans, and then we all got to get excited watching combines go up and down huge hills. But it is more common here. But I'd like to be. The plan is to be able to use it for a multi-purpose. I'd like to be able to do it for corn and beans and wheat. And the John Deere, I know it's. I had heard that the guys that like straw, surprisingly enough, actually didn't like the Deers for that reason, because it basically turned it to shreds. So when they were betting with it, it basically turned to nothing. Um, and I can attest to it. I haven't talked about it a little bit, but out west for a while there was guys experimenting with burning wheat for heat. So they had the outdoor furnaces with wheat. So I got I don't know I got bored or something. And I was trying it. I was like, oh, how would it work with wheat? So I tried with small square bales, and the moral of the story is I scaled it up one time. I went, okay, the small square bales burn for this amount of time. If I scared it up or sized it up for a larger one. Okay, they do a similar job. Okay, maybe they had a straw chopper on this one or something because, as I said, when I opened the round baler or the round bale that was net wrapped, it literally exploded like it was nothing, and I couldn't pick it up with the loader because the wheat chaff was so broken that it was just there was nothing. I had to hand fork it. And then I gave up and just bedded it with the cattle because it didn't work as I planned. But yeah, it's okay. That's good to know. Technology wise, what really changed between the 70s, the 80s, and 90s for combines? Was it just mostly the efficiency and speed of how fast the thing could go, or was there drastic changes that really made a difference? And you go, I couldn't touch that because of blank. I find it here, like when I was getting into hay, a lot of guys did smaller use the sickle bar, and I found that you couldn't financially make it work because it was so slow. And at West, it was really popular. It seemed because you guys have drier hay than we do. But I made the mistake of using when my mower broke, I used it for all of 10 minutes and realized it was not going to fly because the grass was so wet it would basically plug the bar. And that's what I was concerned with. Circling back to how old, like an older combine, like older white, not an old, but an older one that was right when white was going out. Was that a point where it was too far back? And okay, interesting. Okay. Um, yeah, no, I assumed that I had no idea. Like, I look at combines and it scares the daylights out of me how expensive they are. The absolute daylights out of me. And from what I've found on looking at any dealerships, I find uh, it's like all the heads disappear. Like the thing has been run with an open mouth its entire life because for some reason no combines come with combine heads. So every time I look at one on a dealership lot, you go, okay, where's the head? And you find out that they want you to buy it after or separate, and you getting a head alone is another 5 grand. So you have two heads, you're at 10 grand on top of the combine that you're paying a premium at because it's at a dealer. So okay, that's good to know about the 80s stuff because I don't mind it. I don't mind buying an older combine because I'm not doing crazy acres. So as long as they're reliable and it's efficient enough um, where it doesn't um, where it doesn't cost me money to be in the field. It just they all cost you money, but it doesn't cost you where you can't get the job done bad. I'm fine with it. That's good to know because yeah, it just you see it and you know this yourself, Ted. You make in this day and age in farming, you make the wrong mistake and it's financially destruction. It's financial destruction. So I try and research as much as I can to keep myself from going into these things. Because yeah, um, all it takes is one thing. And if you ever see my channel, the display picture, that baler I picked up when I first got into hay, I got that baler and I knew a little bit, but I didn't know a whole lot. And that was a softcore baler, and I found out really quickly in my area no one dealt with softcore bales. So I had to basically flip that baler, and it was no one wanted to buy it because it was a softcore baler, and I ended up sending it to auction. And the auction it sold at auction, and it sold for almost scrap price. And I look up a week later on a used dealership, and I see my baler on there for $6,900, and I almost screamed. And yeah, I it's and that is the last time I sent anything to an auction ever because I was just shocked. But back to the combine thing. That's interesting to know. Um, I'd ask you if you ever looked at. Did you ever? I just see them ever so often. So yeah, it went from 6,800 on his dealership lot, and I got like 850 and change for the whole bit for the thing. I yeah. So yeah. And yeah, so that kind of the way she goes. So I wondered that, and yeah, so I'm gonna look at some of the cases, and it's good to know. I'm hoping in this spring that more pop up on the what w- I don't know. You guys have mostly Craigslist down there. I don't see a secondary like for sale stuff. Like Facebook Marketplace is a little bit here, but I don't find you can find a lot of farm equipment on it. We have something called Kijiji here, and that's the one I find. And then there's one called Ag Dealer, which is the other one you kind of search on, but that's mostly dealerships. And I kind of wait on there and scope stuff out and see what's there because with smaller market, it's hard finding cheaper equipment. I wish I could just drive across to the states and get stuff sometimes because, yeah, it is insane. Sometimes you see stuff. I was when I was looking at tractor loaders, there's stuff that pops up in the states, and I'm so tempted sometimes is to say just get on a flight and see if I can ship it across. But I don't know the hassle between bringing it across the border and all that good stuff. I flew to Calgary before I got my loader tractor and almost pulled the trigger on that because there was a loader out there because as I said, it's insane. And then I watch oh Mac from not Massey Driver. Oh my gosh, I can't remember. He's from the East Coast and they buy stuff from Ontario and they bring it over because they can't get it in Nova Scotia. And yeah, I thought I would have trouble, but there was like three dealers out there, and I looked at it. There was what was there? There was a square baler out there. I was meaning to text him about or send him a message about and see if he'd ever go take a look at it for me, but it didn't end up happening because the thing sold. But yeah, a small dealership range, it becomes a pain in the butt finding equipment. And yeah, so um, yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at on that. I'm gonna take a look at that stuff for the combines. Genetics, maybe you would see a difference between them. If where was I going to go? Does genetic variety make like night and day difference on yields on corn and soybeans? Or is there's a bit of a difference? Like, can you compare and it's astronomical, or are you talking a couple bushels an acre? Because I can't seem to get a straight answer on it. And when the seed prices are where they are and the price ranges are huge, if it makes a night and day difference. Because from my perspective, if I don't find that it made a huge difference in hay. When I looked at hayseed, it was not crazy. It was like, oh yeah, that's probably a better yielding thing, but it was more. I planted it properly. I made sure it had good soil to seed contact, and it was done properly, and it was a weedless or a clean surface, and it grew well. I don't know if corn and beans are the same way in genetics because I know that there's been a lot more investment in that. If it's changed it drastically, um, okay. Um, do, have you ever done the non-GMO realm? Like, have you gone into something so non-genetically modified seed on crop versus like the genetically modified stuff? If it's made a difference for you guys? Because yeah, I just wondered. Here, there's a bunch of them, and yeah, it's for me, it's like throwing darts at a dartboard. Okay. Um, so there's for me, there's Pioneer here, and there's oh, fuck, yeah, that's how much I know. Like there's like two or three brands, and I just all I know is every time I talk to a guy that's gonna talk to me about corn and beans, it usually becomes into how much fertilizer and grains that theirs is the best conversation. Um, okay. Um, do they offer that in Canada? Oh, channel. Is that a genetic trait or is that an actual brand? Oh my gosh. Okay, so I am so okay, it's a brand. Okay. Um, uh, okay. I'm surprised right now that I can have a conversation with you and the dog isn't screaming. Anytime I do a Zoom call, every noise, crack, and pop in this old house, he squeals and barks up a storm. Uh, I have headphones on 9 times out of 10, and they can hear it through the headphones. So it's just nice that I can just talk and it's somewhat normal. Okay, I'll look them up. For me, I'm kind of looking into the short day stuff. I don't know why it always scares me if you see beans in the field or corn in the field because you didn't get it planted early enough. Or so okay, okay, yeah. So there is some genetics here that I know that come out of Ontario, um, especially on that front. Um, so I am kind of looking at them, and yeah, I just for me, I've talked to a couple guys and trying to get it going and kind of pencil it out. And being, I don't know if you ever face this, but for me, being a smaller operation, jumping bigger, it's a lot more moving parts, and the financing aspect has been a bit of a stickler for me because it's just trying to pencil it out and finding the resources to do that. Just kind of lining up, and I know that sounds like a silly thing, but just finding prices, what it's going to cost me to put this in the field, what it's going to cost me for harvesting combine fees, all this type of stuff. And I know that's the research that goes into it, but finding the differences in seed prices on whether it's bulk or whether I wish they posted it on the internet, but they don't. So you end up having to call each dealer and saying, what's the price on this and at this price and all that good stuff. Yeah. So, um, yeah, I see. I watch your channel and I see what the way you guys do it and all that type of stuff. And I always wonder because you guys have a decent size, and I wonder how you jump from the small to the larger because I look at it and I go, if I a prime example is that hay, if I jumped into hay in a large way, I don't know how farms transition from being one size, so smaller, and then transition into growing, either whether it's through getting the land to that size and then covering the land with the equipment of that size to be able to pencil it in and scale it up each small increment each way. I don't know if that makes any sense. So if I was, let's say, to go and do 500 acres hay, how you would pencil it in so that you have a constant, you slowly scale up equipment and size to get to it so that it lines up. Okay. So you're saying just pick it slowly but surely, grow it up and expand every year. Okay. That it makes sense. Yeah. I've always found that anytime I've gone, I guess I shouldn't do banking stuff, but anytime I've gone and I've looked at scaling sizes and all this type of stuff, it's become your collateral that's behind it. So they go, okay, you're this, you're this. What's the collateral behind you? So you either needed a farm collateral of the farm that you run and the asset behind that, or you had to have equipment behind it or something like that. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's kind of the way I saw it too. And I wondered that too. I don't know if you've noticed it out your way, but with the used equipment market right now, just trying to find deals. um, that tractor, that Landini, since I've owned it, it's gone up $20,000. Oh, okay. Uh, Holy man, I would never have guessed you put that many hours on them. Um, Really. Um, wow. You put in 1,000 hours each, 2,000 hours in the field. You must have an apartment in those things. Yeah, because if you ever see me in any of my videos where it looks like I want to jump out of that tractor, it's usually because the air conditioner broke. 9 times out of 10. Um, it has this funny function of when it becomes hot, the connection inside the AC unit decides not to work well. So the air conditioner quits. So you're basically hanging at 120 inside the cab. Oh man. Yeah. So it is crazy out there too. Yeah. Um, no, it's interesting. Like as I said, I've been trying, like what we've been doing here with trying to do the farm to table stuff, and yeah, I I'm gonna be doing, with any luck, I'm gonna be trying that millet thing this year. I don't know if I talked to you about that, so I'm. Oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So you custom spray as well. Holy crap, that makes a whole lot of sense. Wow, that's. I hope you don't do all that by yourself because that is a crazy amount of acres. But I guess maybe I'm in my own little bubble with the Ontario world because, as I said, I don't think in my township there's that much. Holy man. Um, and I know you guys have it, you scale up bigger out there because it seems like you need more acreage for margin. Yeah. Because like you guys do from my experience anyway at West, they basically have 1,000 acre squares and they call them quarters when they're 250. So you'd basically be per quarter. And because at one point I had looked at going out west, and it's economies of scale, I guess, because I looked before we transitioned here. I had looked at going. Um, I liked the cattle thing, and I wanted to do the cattle thing, and I had looked to go out west, and I didn't even mind going to the states at one point. So I priced out things like Montana and Wyoming because that seemed to be cheap land, and then found out that how many cattle you could get on per acre was a lot less. So it didn't really pencil out as well. And I had priced out Wisconsin and Minnesota a little bit too, and what worked out there. And I found out that the land, if you added up in cattle, it didn't really matter. You were basically in the same boat, whether you liked it or not, because it just ended up being the more expensive the land was, the more price, the more cattle you could put on per acre. And it seemed that that was the way it went. And that's kind of the way it kind of penciled out here. So that kind of kept me from looking too far outside Ontario because that was the way it kind of was. You can't really buy big land here. Like it just doesn't exist. Um, and there was a push to go up north for a while there. I see it in the farm magazine ever so often, uh, where they want you to go to like Kapuskasing or something. And I don't. I think I would lose my mind. I don't think I could do it. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, okay. So, did you buy them bred, or did you breed them yourselves and wait the 9 months and then finish out? Because I had seen guys that had done a where they basically buy cows at the stockyards. Okay, yeah, they bought cattle at the stockyards that were basically old cows. They would more or less buy them, graze them out on grass, and then sell them as grass fed and flip them to the abattoirs. But here you couldn't really. I looked at it, and you can't really do it because you can't kill anything over. Essentially, the cost goes through the roof, and a lot of butchers won't do older cows. They don't want to do it, and they. So I at one point I looked for a grass fed contract, trying to find something that way because it kind of penciled out pretty well. And yeah, so interesting. Um, were you always kind of an Angus, like, black guy, or like a black Angus guy, or did it matter on breed or genetics when you were doing that? Because I always wonder what gets premium in different areas, and I see it in um, different areas, and I take a look, and you kind of go, okay, that seems to be what is popular. Okay, all right, you're like me. Then it's about the dollars and cents. I wonder because um, in this area, it's everybody wants Charlet. Everybody is always about Charlet. You get some guys that are Angus's, and there's some guys that are Charlets. It used to be they would mix Charlet with Hereford for a while. That became a popular thing. But at the stockyards, that's all they want to sell or buy. And surprisingly enough, okay, interesting. So at my stockyard, um, where we ship, so there's to give you context, if you ever look it up, I don't know why. I'm nosy, so when people show stockyards, I look up where the stockyard is and what they're about. So my stockyard here is Cookstown that we ship to, and most of Ontario ships to. And it's a lot of the Mennonite guys who basically run the cattle operation here are all about Charlets. And Anguses will come in the yard, and it'll depend on whose Anguses they are. And the only reason I know this is because when I was trying to get my cattle finisher loan, I I lived at the stockyards for like a month watching who bought what, how they bought it, what colors they liked, what they were looking for, because I was trying to learn the cattle industry and how it kind of worked. And by the end of it and showing up, I could tell before it went in the ring who was buying it based on the color and the look of the thing. I could basically have the number because they save the same number every time because that's the way it was. And where I was going with this is the black. There was certain guys that were basically designed to buy Charlets, and the black genetics. If they went through, if you were a guy that I guess had a really good name or moved a lot of cattle, it would sell as well as the Charlets. It would sell right away, great. If you weren't, you could sell show cattle in that ring, and it wasn't a name that they liked, and it would get 50 cents off like it was nothing, even if it was a big group. It boggled my mind. And I couldn't believe it because I'd seen some very nice Angus go through. And I have an uncle that does that, that have purebred Anguses. And every time he sells them at that yard, he gets pissed off because you work hard to put good genetics through and you get dinged. And now he doesn't even sell to the stockyards, he sells them as organic, and that's kind of his thing. And yeah, so that's interesting that they get more, um, because from my experience, Angus seems really popular, and a lot of guys love them, and they have the branding coming with the Angus Association, and I find it's a lot easier finding genetics for them. So you can find a million different bulls that you can look up every EPD and alive, and it's great. Um, yeah, thanks so much, Ted. I always appreciate the knowledge. Take care. Have a good night. So, but yeah, I'd really appreciate that. Yeah, send is if you ever need, yeah, send me a message on or I'll try, I forget how to contact through YouTube. My login is basic, or my email thing is the same as my name is written, Young Gun Farmer 416 at gmail.com if you ever need to contact. I should put that in the description sometimes. But yeah, I'd really appreciate that because it always helps kind of getting someone with more experience, their look on it and their view on it. Take care. So my Instagram, I my phone broke and I can't get into it. So I can't seem to log into it. And that's why I haven't been on Instagram in months. So I have one that is my new one, but there's like three people on it because I haven't really worked it or used it. We'll see. What is it? Graham. I think I only have Anderson Cattle Company on it. Yeah, I'll send you a message on it. If it, I'll send you a message on my new one, and yeah, give you a contact or a call or something because yeah, I'd really appreciate it. Thanks so much, Ted. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at here. Anybody that's been watching and kind of doing this, and that's it's been slow around here with everything because of the whole thing going on, and it's been isolated. So these YouTube streams, every time I see someone go and do a live, every time I see someone do a live stream, it's like, oh yeah, Saturday night. Normally I'd be out, not now. Nope. And even Fridays. So it's always exciting seeing people do live streams because it's like, oh yeah, it's good to talk to everybody and see everybody. And it's nice with the whole YouTube and Instagram thing where you have something in common because I'm finding more and more that people are in such a different world. They they yeah, it's just a completely different world now. And everybody's so different that when you have something in common and you have something that you guys do that's the same, it's just you have someone to talk to and bounce ideas off because it's just been great. I've been watching everybody's stream, so if you ever see me on there, it's yeah, it's always a good time because you pick one little thing, and even Ted here talking. The amount of times I went, "Oh, that's such a cool idea that they do out west," and nobody will do it here. Nobody will do that same idea, and I just never get it. My V rake is a prime example. Every time, I think I am the only guy within 100 or 200 kilometers of the V rake. They are just non-existent, and I do not know why. Oh man, I've been meaning to contact you one of these days because yeah, I haven't been on and I haven't been doing a whole lot. And for a while there, I was having difficulty trying to upload, and I don't know. Because I moved and stuff, and everything kind of transitioned. It's been a whole new little island of world around here. So I just didn't know which area you were based out of, or roughly. So yeah, I just didn't know because I assumed you were in Western Ontario, and yeah, gone there. So I've been in my own little world here, just trying to get this farm going and everything working well, and trying to set things up before it froze up. And it's been pretty easy now because it's set up. But I've been meaning to talk to everybody, and I do miss it because it's been a while. But maybe I'm wrong. I get the feeling that Don's from that area. Um, so yeah, everything's been good. Just puttering away, puttering away, puttering away. I yeah, I've been experimenting a little bit and trying to plan out for next spring and what I'm doing. I was just talking to Ted here about trying to expand out and kind of diversify my operation a little bit, and try and get into either cash cropping or expand the herd a bit so that it pulls out a bit more yield. We are going to farm to table on the beef. So it's been that's kind of been the push here, and it's just trying to pencil it all out and trying to make it so that you don't bite on more than you can chew, because it's farming has become such a narrow margin game that you don't want to make a mistake. You don't want to make, and it's horrible to say like you shouldn't make mistakes, but you don't want to make a mistake that's going to cost you more than a year's worth of anything, because it just has been transitioning so fast. Um, a funny story for you guys, because I trucked differently this year. I trucked with someone else. Okay, you're in Central. Without telling me the exact town, like the biggest, closest, decent sized town, I was in Central too, and I've moved more eastward. So our farm was in Central too, the old one, and now it's on the eastern side of Ontario there. Because I don't know if you noticed in your area, Don, but the price of real estate was just crazy, absolutely insane. So it wasn't doable in the area. I was looking all over hex half acre trying to find something, but it's been crazy. And now in the last 2 years, it's skyrocketed. So it was the last year. That's a big reason why I didn't down or upload a lot too, is because it was a stressful time transitioning, because I had to move everything, and I was kind of on my own. So you're moving things hours away on your own, piece by piece by piece by piece, and yeah, if you that's kind of where I was at on it, and I slowly but surely moved stuff over, and I did catch a season luckily, but I was having horrible luck with my baler this year. So yeah, that's what I assumed. So yeah. So where I was before, I did all of our farm business was in Elmira, almost all of it exclusively. So when I moved to Eastern Ontario, um, it's it, it's different, because now you have to find all new contacts and you have to do totally different business, and everything changed, and even so much so that most of the chickens and turkeys that we did this year, actually all of them, still got processed over there. So it ended up being that we trucked it because we had such good luck there, and we've had such you made such good friends, and everybody works together. It was great. So even though I wasn't really from Western Ontario, all we would try we'd go there once a week just doing farm business, whether it was equipment parts, whether it was everything. Processing was all done over there, whether it was buying equipment, whether it was buying livestock stuff. You could get anything and everything within 3 towns, whether I was in Elmira, whether I was in Listowel, whether I was, and it was great. And I still go there. I shouldn't, but I still do because you build that relationship, and they just been so great to us, and especially working with Mennonites and that it's been so good because they want to work with you, and it's been great. So I do miss it, and even out here, it's just different. It's trying to build your contacts and making it work. So um, yeah, so the whole real estate thing I am amazed that the guys that are sitting in Kitchener Waterloo and even all the way through London, I am amazed there hasn't been a migratory sell off in the price of real estate in farms out there. Yeah, that's where I got my rake. So they were great guys, and I still get parts from them because they are one of the better guys for parts. They've always worked together with me, and even for my coon stuff, they always worked with me with parts and stuff, and it was just great. Um, where uh, yeah, so they've been good guys. The only thing that kind of sucked is my salesman there did migrate on to greener pastures, which kind of sucked because I liked the guy and he was a nice guy. So I don't really have a designated salesman there anymore. But yeah, they were always good. I haven't done a lot of work there with John Deere because we had a couple John Deere dealerships that were closer to us. But now I am again. I John Deere was nice because if I ever needed a part, they had the whole warehouse in Western Ontario. So I could literally go to the dealer and say, "Oh, you don't have that stock. Can I just get it from the warehouse and then bill me?" And I could run and get that part. Didn't matter what it was. So when I had a John Deere mower issue, I could get the dogs that were in the clutch, which no dealership ever stocked, within 24 hours. It was great. So yeah, yeah, I was missing that because yeah, there isn't as many Mennonite communities around here, and they it always amazed me how they were just always so far forward on technology when it came to agriculture. They were always cutting edge when it came to quality products and um, and even innovation when it came to cropping or whether it was livestock, whether it was everything. So I was near Alliston, if you know where that is. And then after that I moved on the other side of like the Eastern Ontario. So I'm trying to think here. So I'm farther past Peterborough now. I'm farther east. So that'd be the biggest. So it was a bit of a transition on it, and yeah, that's kind of where we went. And I've been kind of careful on it too because with the whole YouTube thing, you just had to be careful about um, more or less who's watching and stuff and all that stuff. And yeah, so it was a bit of a different thing. So we moved farther east, and surprisingly enough, I should have filmed it because I ran every piece of equipment across by tractor. The mower came over. Wait, no, I didn't. The mower came over at the tractor, and then the baler I towed behind my truck, and the rake I towed behind my truck, and then yeah. So if you're in if you're near Kitchener Waterloo, you imagine midsummer when cycling season comes, when all of the Tour de France happens through all of Ontario because everybody decides to get on a bike on a road, and they loved me. That mower was 13 foot wide, and let me tell you, it needed every inch on on every inch on every road. because the cyclists were just everywhere those days, and so it was just nerve wracking the entire drive. There's one. There is there? Okay. So there's. I knew there was a one in Lindsay. I didn't know if there was one in Peterborough. Do you know if in Lindsay if it's Mennonite or Amish or both? I wasn't quite sure, or I don't if it's Mennonite, Amish, or Quaker. I never really knew because I know there is I knew there is one there, but it's not as accessible, if you know what I mean. Like it doesn't seem to be as big of a community, and they don't seem to have the stores like the equipment and their own stores. If you do know about it, or I just don't know where I'm going, loved. I'm all ears because um, I haven't been able to find it or locate it or been able to make contacts there because I know there is, as I said, outside of Lindsay, because there was some flat areas in there that they really liked for a while, and there was kind of made me laugh because there was a joke going around. They're older. Okay, okay, so yeah, I was 50-50 on it because I didn't see track like a lot of the equipment was cabless, and I kind of thought that, but um, I didn't see a lot of a lot of oh come on um, like it just a different style of fashion maybe with the wagons and stuff. I just haven't seen a lot of it around, so I just didn't know. Okay, they're older Mennonites, so yeah. Even so, yeah, I was kind of working on that, and like I said, anytime that they were buying farms in Lindsay, they were basically tiling everything. So you'd see Mennonite farms come in and they would basically tile it all. So you'd see huge equipment on the stuff. So interesting, interesting, interesting. So yeah, that's like I said, I'm amazed that a large group haven't left Waterloo and sold their chips and basically moved because the real estate prices are insane all the way through on farm country, all the way through London, all the way down. I would say into like South Chatham, like just the amount. I understand because you can grow taller, and I know that was kind of the thing I found in Elmira. Um, was it just went taller. So everybody had an operation that went taller, and the one guy would run dairy. There was one guy that would run chicken, and there'd be the one guy that ran cash crop. And I know you can use the equity on your property to do that. I was just surprised because there's just so many big guys there, where I'm surprised that they didn't just sell their chips and basically move to a community where they could be bigger, where they could basically expand out. But I understand it is a lifestyle too, and money isn't everything. But it's just gotten obscene, and I do not know how the younger guys, like the younger farm families, are doing it there. Because it's just yeah, it's just gotten insane, absolutely insane, and even out east here, it was cheap for a while, and then the prices just went through the roof in the last 2 years. Um, I swear that half of Toronto moved out to Eastern Ontario in the last 2 years. Just everywhere and anywhere, everywhere and anywhere, especially through the cottages and stuff. Um, I you see it, and you just see it on the highways. It's just insane. Or Sunday, Friday night or Sunday night. Yeah. Um, yeah. There was a time where you would have a 4-lane highway. Like I drove down one of the major highways, and 4-lane, two on each side, and there was times where it was solid with cars going back, solid on a Sunday. I just dropped my jaw because it felt like I was on. a 3 series highway at times. It was just crazy. So yeah, I know what you're saying. Like everybody's kind of um, trying to figure out what they do and all this type of stuff. I for transitioning and especially and with them having larger families, I always wondered because I know that can't be easy. And the last generation too, it's a very hard decision because you've seen asset appreciation. Not to get go too technical, you've seen asset values skyrocket so fast that your parents and their parents never saw that type of growth. So to have that type of number wiggling in front of you can be awfully difficult to transition and generationally pass down that type of stuff equally and fairly because it's such a big number now compared to what it once was. It's 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 just frightening. In my so for my age group and even 10 years older than me, and I would say even 15 years older than me, if they don't have a house or a property by now, they ain't getting one. Not in Ontario anymore. Like they are gonna rent. That's the way it is. And the amount of times you hear about, oh yeah, just work harder, it's shocking because you basically need to make that deposit for a place now for a property. You need to make over 100K, and I'm not even talking a little over 100K. I'm talking like mid 100K now to be able to find it because the way the structure is now with the properties and the farms. That's what I'm saying. Like, no worries. Good talking to you. I kind of streamed this too because I knew this was last minute. So if anybody ever sees this stream and and has any questions or anything like that, I might do another one tomorrow night. Um, if you have any questions, feel free to post it below and see what's good because I feel that this might be a better way of communicating, and that was part of the reason I liked YouTube is because you could communicate with the people that are there. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to leave them below. And yeah, it's nice to be able to kind of mingle ideas. And I was telling this to Ted too because there's a lot of stuff that came from out west where I saw it and nobody does it. Nobody does it here. And then you see and you're like, that's a great idea. I don't know why anybody doesn't do it here. A prime example is they have windbreaks out there that nobody does here, and I've pondered it a lot on figuring out windbreaks where they have the wood panel windbreaks because when you're on top of hills here, which happens a lot, it makes a huge difference on the snow piling up as well as the amount of wind the cattle can get out of. Like we have some hills where they can dip in the holes for when it's really windy, but it's very nice for them to have something where they have a protection on all four sides. My cattle have gotten a little spoiled now because I fenced off part of that barn. So if you've seen in my videos the silver barn, I fenced off part of that, and they have a third of that, and they have never had indoor buildings where they can walk in and out of just at their own comfort and leisure. And, I'll wake up in the morning if it's snowing, raining, or anything in between. They will be in there and they will just have their heads just out enough to kind of see if it's entertaining enough to go outside in the cold or if they're going to stay inside all day and keep warm. And I think it's made a difference in the amount of hay they eat because when it gets sloppy, they go in that barn. Even if it's not bedded and there's no straw on the ground, they're stand sleeping all the time. It's no big deal. And it's made such a huge difference. And the cattle are clean. And so I was 50-50 when I first put the barnyard up there. I was like, should I fence that off or should I make it so that and this winter they've really enjoyed it. So I'm going to get off this stream and I might do another one tomorrow, and I should post more too and kind of connect with everyone. I love hearing different people on how they farm different stuff in different areas. So, if you have any ideas for different channels to watch too, I'd love to hear some different ideas because it just always gets my brain going, thinking, oh no, that system works well, and even my V rake. Um, that was a prime example. No one had a V rake around here. No one V rakes. I'm the only one, and it works perfect. It works so good with hay, and it was an economical way to bring two rows into one, and it saves me so much time and money on baling because you're baling twice as fast. You are just going and going, and the longer that PTO spins, the more fuel it burns, the more time it burns. You want to get that off, and this thing working on the friction of the ground, I just thought it was an incredible idea. So, but I won't keep you guys. Thanks again for watching. Even if you guys watch it later, take care. And if you guys like the idea of me streaming, let me know. I'll kind of set some time up, and I'll kind of do a day where I do it, so that this way so I can talk to people and they can kind of pre-plan it because I know it's Friday night at 12 o'clock. So take care, guys.